We've now gone quite far with the line of sight functionality, but there's still one feature left to implement. I've got the scene open in front of me here with the Ethan character inside the viewport here. One of the problems that remains is that, for example, the player character could be within the spherical volume of the Ethan character. In addition, it may be within the field of view of the NPC. So, for example, it could still be standing in front of this object here, but it's still possible that an object stands between the NPC and the player character. For example, if I choose Game Object, 3D Object, and then I select Cube here, and I'm just going to bring this into the scene, and I won't put it directly in front of this object, but what I'm going to do a little bit here is just bring this off to the side and bring this over here and just scale this out just a little bit, thin this out and move this up. Now it's possible that when the player character is standing here, that the NPC could see it. But if this object were in the way, of course, then the NPC would not be able to see the player object. It would be standing in the way. And I want to accommodate that situation now. If I select the Ethan character inside the hierarchy panel here, and I take a look at the line of sight script inside the object inspector, you can see that some additions have been made to this code, and I want to explain what they are. In particular, I have added two new variables. These are last known sighting. This simply records the position of the player character when it's being seen by the NPC, and if the player character leaves the sight of the NPC will stop updating this variable and just maintain the last time or the last known position of the player character when it was seen. The top variable is called sensitivity, and this can be either strict or loose. This simply controls under what conditions will the NPC classify the player as visible or being seen. There are different versions or reasons why we might want to have this, and we're going to see what those are later. But what I will do right now is to bring up this code inside MonoDevelop to take a look at how it works. So I'm going to bring MonoDevelop into the scene here, and you can see that we have a lot of the code that we had before. We've got all of our variables defined up here, and again we've got the in field of view function that we've seen before, but beneath this we have a new function called clear line of sight, which returns true or false. Once an object is within our field of view, there could be an object between the NPC and the player that blocks the field of view here, and this function will determine whether or not the NPC has a clear line of sight to the player character. The way it does this is by using a physics raycast function, and you can see that here on this line of code. So what we are doing is we are simply taking the position of the eye point, and we are casting out a line or a ray from the eye point to the player character, and we are determining whether an object stands in the way. If the ray collided with an object that was not the player character, that was not tagged as the player, then we return the value false. However, if the NPC has a direct line of sight to the player character, then it returns the value of true to indicate that not only is the object in our field of view, but we have a direct line of sight to it and nothing stands in the way. If I scroll down even further, you can see that we have the function here onTriggerStay, which is the event called automatically every time the player is inside the spherical volume of the NPC. This is using the updateSight function to update the canSeeTarget variable. Notice that if that variable is true, we are always recording the last known sighting of the target position. But the updateSight variable, which can be included up here, this is where our strict and loose conventions determine whether the canSeeTarget variable is true or false. Under the strictest conditions, canSeeTarget will be labeled as true if the player character is within our field of view and there is a clear line of sight to the player character. By using the loose convention, the canSeeTarget variable is set to true in the case of if the player character is within our field of view or we have a clear line of sight to them. Now, in some cases, we can have a clear line of sight to the player character, but they are not within our field of view. For example, when the player character is standing behind the enemy character, in that case, there might be a clear line of sight to the player in that there's no intervening objects between the NPC and the player, but they still might not be inside our field of view. The reason for the strict and loose convention will become clear later when we implement enemy AI. So this is the basic class for line of sight. I'm going to press Ctrl S on the keyboard to make sure that the code is saved here, minimize MonoDevelop, and return back to Unity. I'm going to give our code a test here and see how it works. So now let's press play on the toolbar. So I'm going to press play here to begin playback, and I'm going to walk around until I'm in line of sight of the enemy character here. So I'm going to run around this side, and straight away you can see here from the line of sight component that the can see target is enabled. Notice that as I move around, the last known sighting is updating as well. But as soon as I leave the field of view and I move around, the last known sighting still remains at what it was the last time we were seen. So I'm going to go back into view here. But as I walk behind the solid obstacle here, the cube, notice can see target disappears because now the NPC cannot see us since the object is in the way here. Now, of course, I could come back over here to the scene tab, and I'm just going to move this obstacle out of the way, maybe to this side, and then select Ethan here in the hierarchy panel, and you can see that can see target is now enabled. We didn't move the player character, we just moved the obstacle, and now we can be seen because the obstacle is no longer in the way. I could grab that again and move that back into position around about kind of like there. Select Ethan, and again notice the can see target is deactivated because I've moved the solid object in the way, which demonstrates that the clear line of sight function is working as intended. So now we have the ability to determine whether an NPC can see a player character, and this is very important functionality moving forwards with enemy AI.